Money Fellows is an alternative way of borrowing and saving, basically in a much more efficient, much more social and culturally favorable manner. We're doing this basically by digitizing a very ancient, very traditional model known as ROSCAs, Rotating Savings and Credit Associations, which is known here as Al-Jam'iyya, but also known as chit funds in India, tandas in Mexico, committees in Pakistan. So it's a very common model, been there for hundreds of years, completely offline, and we've digitized it to meet, the modern way, the modern world that we're in today. Basically, it's an alternative lending and saving model, allowing people to access credit and save money in a more incentivizing manner and more affordable, much more affordable as well. The big idea is to really be able to give people access to credit and help them reach their saving goals across the world. Try to simplify a model that's been there for hundreds of years and digitize it, make it a lot more convenient, safe, and a lot more affordable and efficient. This model is huge. It's been there, like I've said, for hundreds of years, very common over 90 countries around the world, with an estimated money circulation every year in those countries of almost close to $1 trillion every year across ROSCAs all around the world every year. In Egypt alone, there's an estimate of around $13 billion that rotates in offline ROSCAs in the informal sector. And like we all know, over 70% of the population in Egypt are unbanked. Below 10% are actually those with facilities, and most of them with facilities are actually secured. So ROSCAs has always been an alternative model that people resort to when it comes to reaching their financial goals and needs. So I worked closely with a very close friend and a colleague back in the days. Whenever we actually went through a challenge ourselves or a pain, we actually tried to always solve it using technology. So the first thing we've worked on was back in 2005 was an object tracking software, one of the very first libraries to detect objects. So we used it for many use cases, like built a few games using the camera. We're able to drag and drop, and control the mouse from remotely without having the physical mouse in hand. So we've worked a lot on this object tracking side, and we've then worked with Microsoft and Daimler on this project. And then this is where we then shifted to, we then a few years later did an online supermarket back in Germany. And then the final project was actually a automated crawler that crawls the web for real estate. So whenever anyone wants to rent something, they basically just put their criteria, and then whenever any of the websites within that country, a new entry is entered, it actually notifies the person with that criteria to be one of the first to actually request to rent and so on. So these were the main three projects that we worked on before Money Fellows. Learned a lot from some of those failures as well. And Money Fellows then came up to me when I was trying to access credit myself. Being new to Germany, and my credit score didn't allow me to get the whole amount I was looking for. So I tried to I ended up trying to find alternative solutions. And I went back, the memories back in the days where I've always seen how ROSCAs have helped people in such situations. And this is where I tried to find one back in Germany. It was very difficult to find, the ROSCA I was looking for. So I ended up finding one back home, did the transfers through Western Union. It was a very painful process. And this is where I thought, digitizing this model and ideally on a global scale is really something that a lot of other people would need. And built a prototype, tried to make it work in Germany. Didn't really work in Germany because of the culture. Went to the UK, and this is where we actually started. We moved to Startup Bootcamp FinTech in London, which was sponsored by MasterCard, Lloyds Bank, Rabobank, and this was the beginning of Money Fellows back in around 2017. We moved then to Egypt, launched in 2018, and this is where it actually really made sense due to the pain of the market itself. It was a much bigger market, much easier to penetrate, versus in the UK, there were so many lending options, many saving options. So for us to really stand out, digitizing Roscas wasn't as big as an opportunity like it was in Egypt, at least. And this is where we think once we are now about to like nail it in Egypt, this is where we think we can then replicate this model across other markets soon. So when I first started, I actually had a co-founder back in London, where we started officially Money Fellows. And when we took the decision to move to Egypt, due to the opportunity being bigger, a lot simpler, the cultural affinity and so on, the co-founder didn't actually want to move back to Egypt. So I ended up moving back on my own to Egypt and, go through the whole journey. It was a tough journey being a sole founder, especially in a very highly regulated industry like fintech. This model was actually quite new. There wasn't enough benchmarks to really compare globally of who did it and how. So we had to actually be the first to think out of the box and try to go through every single hiccup throughout this whole journey and try to solve it ourselves. It wasn't an easy journey, especially in such a scenario, especially that, in countries like Egypt, offering a new unregulated model makes it a lot harder to build a brand and that is trusted enough, especially by our savers. So we tell people to save for 12 and 24 months and trust us enough to keep their money safe and so on. So the lack of the regulations in a country like Egypt was extremely difficult to really unlock that. But I mean, it took one step at a time to really build credibility. We relied mainly on referrals and getting one user to love us and getting the other. So we tried to work a lot on organic growth versus just subsidizing and trying to get people for a short period of time. So fundraising was also quite tough. It was always a chicken egg problem. Investors would like to see a regulated model, and the regulator would actually want to see a well-funded company and so on. So it was always a chicken egg problem back in the early days. But yeah, I think investors actually saw the persistence we had and saw the opportunity. Of course, I mean, the very early ones took a higher risk. So building a team was also, especially of a good talent pool, was also as hard as fundraising. Again, this is, acquiring talent and retaining them is also as challenging as getting people investors to invest in the company. So back in the early days, we tried our best to actually work on our own network to onboard people who already knew us and trusted us and so on. We started, of course, with we were 3 in a garage, basically. Again, it's not a cliche, but we actually started this whole thing in a garage of my parents' house, and then we started to grow the team. Today, we're over 320 employees, full-time employees. Fund raised over $45 million. We've circulated over 15 billion Egyptian pounds to date. Number of users, so far we have almost around 400,000 active paying customers, around 4 million downloads so far. So I remember back in the early days, we were actually quite short on cash, extremely short on cash. I had to really sell almost everything I had back in the days. And then we had a commitment finally from one of the investors. So we were, working hard, spending and so on, with the hope that, we're about to close and get that seed round done. And then a few months later, down the line, during the, subscription agreement drafting and so on, we got a call that, they're not able to do it anymore. So we were in a situation that was extremely tough. We couldn't pay salaries. People had to leave us. And the thing that brought us back to life was actually a pitch competition, a very simple pitch competition. It was actually MIT Pan-Arab thing, and we traveled to Bahrain. Probably this was the last hope we had. and out of like 300, actually it was a lot more. I can't remember the number of applications, but out of all of those and the shortlisted ones, we were the number one winner with a $50,000 grant, which actually brought us back to life. So I think this, especially, when it comes back to the memory, this was actually maybe a very minimal amount that, if we talk now about is very, but to me, this was actually the thing that without it Money Fellows wouldn't have been in life today. To be honest, I always sort of gatekeep those issues to myself, just to give enough confidence to the to the continuity of the business. I didn't want the employees to feel all that stress, so it was like being double two personalities, one that is extremely optimistic and opportunistic and so on, and then on the other side it's like always questioning whether this is the right thing I'm doing. It was a question that I had to wake up in the middle of the night and ask myself, is this really the right thing to do or not? So it was a very tough situation, but yeah, I mean, I think everything eventually passes. To be honest, we've been like lately enrolled into the Endeavor network, and to be honest, I mean, we've been already benefiting a lot. One of the things is that they actually joined and participated in our second closing. So Endeavor Catalyst was a very quick move. It was unexpected. We joined the network, and then a few weeks later they expressed their interest to participate, moved very fast, and were able to actually join in the second closing. So this was like really the financial aspect of things. Now that we're also trying to focus on country expansion, they've already been actively introducing us to networks and the Endeavor team in those other countries. And to be honest, without it would have been a lot harder to really penetrate that network in that country and get a quick understanding of what it takes and what's needed to actually decide on that country, and then who to partner with and so on. So I mean, just a simple connection to an Endeavor in another country, and then we taking it from there, it was actually quite beneficial for us to really at least understand a few markets much faster than if we would have done it ourselves. The company, we joined Endeavor, I think around mid-Feb this year. We've always actually wanted to build, so one of the main reasons we were very keen to join Endeavor's network is to really build an advisory board that helps us take this company from the stage we're in to the next level. And we've already been working closely with the Endeavor team to build this network and this advisory board based on really the need we have and the gaps and so on. And this whole experience is already so much, is extremely beneficial, and I'm amazed with really the network. I wasn't expecting that network to be that qualified. So yeah, extremely excited to continue that and build a very solid advisory board with the help of Endeavor's network. Apart from that, the ISP and the LSP process itself, so the international selection panel. Apart from that, the international selection panel and the local selection panel had very high quality sort of potential advisors. The type of challenges, questions, and that we went through was actually very exciting and very beneficial. And we've actually been quite closely working now and generally with a lot of those judges that we went through throughout that selection process. So we enjoyed the selection process, and we're looking forward to reconnect and continue talking to more of Endeavor's network. One thing that really makes me happy throughout my day-to-day in Money Fellows is actually having a close look into the impact we provide to our customers. So it might seem cliche, but when you start seeing a lot of people, funding emergencies, opening projects, paying their tuition fees, and so all sort of like really true impactful stories, this is something that actually really makes us all as a team quite motivated every day.